Talk about a good man. A good man looks to God for direction and follows his will. A great man gives back to his community and makes it a stronger and better one. Rick Ector is a great man, not only a NRA certified firearms trainer, a Second Amendment advocate, and always called upon on Fox News and other white programs to discuss black on black crime. Uh, Tonight, however, ladies and gentlemen, as you can find him on Twitter at Detroit CCW, and that's just a jest out to Fox News and all the other media. Don't take it too harshly. But tonight, I am honored by the fact that this man in 2 years has trained over 3,000 women in the Detroit area on how to use firearms. He is a great, great man, and I am so thankful to know him and to be able to call upon him in this particular hour of need of discussion. He is none other than Rick Ector, firearms trainer and Second Amendment advocate. You can find him again on Twitter at Detroit CCW. Without further ado, thank you so much for being here tonight, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. It's always an honor to be on the show.
Rick, listen, I don't know anything about guns. You know, I only grew up in urban America. Uh, and apparently what I learned
Right?
is that you don't point it. That's the first thing. I don't know if you learned it on the blacktops of Detroit, but I learned it on the blacktops of DC. If you're going to pull it, you mean to kill. Don't do it unless you mean to kill. And I got to ask you tonight, that's a provocative first question, but we got a serious conversation that has to go on with a lot of conservatives who have misplaced devotions for Alec Baldwin because they made he made them laugh or cry in movies. Is what he did on the set of Rust in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the same, being handled in the same manner that it would be in Detroit or New York or Washington, D.C.?
You know, I look at it very simply. Firearm safety applies equally to everyone, regardless of what town you're from or your background. There's just certain fundamental things that you do when you handle firearms. And when you look at the litany of rules that exist, he made it appears to be a concerted effort to violate most of them that are most important. And it was just horrifying to see. And
Yeah.
the fact that with his lengthy movie career and the number of people that are working in Hollywood today and elsewhere across the country, it's a wonder we don't have more of these incidents.
Exactly. And we probably do. We just don't hear about them because it doesn't appear to be gun control in Hollywood. Am I right about that? They seem to have a great passion and love for having guns and ammo on their sets. But they come out to my neighborhood and tell me where the gang leaders and MS-13 are that I don't need a gun to protect myself. Am I going in the wrong direction with any of that?
You know, I definitely understand the sentiment against Hollywood types because they tend to be anti-gun, but I'm not going to look at it that way
Yeah.
within that prism. I'm just going to look at it straight up as a firearm safety issue. So whether you're in Hollywood or whether you work as an actor or director or not, if you are handling firearms, regardless of your politics, regardless of where you're from, regardless of what you do, there are just some cardinal things that you must do and some things that you should not do. And unfortunately, this incident shows us when firearm safety is not taken into account and not given the seriousness that it merits. It's not rocket science. Anyone can learn it. You know what? I'm even, I'm really flabbergasted that people in Hollywood, considering what they do, make movies and display imagery about certain things such as guns, that they don't just, as a matter of course, just ensure that all of their people on these sets are at least given minimum training with regards to gun safety.
Exactly. And in Hollywood, according to the union that deals with props, if any actor is going to use a firearm on the set, he must go through some training, like the training that you have given over 3,000 women in 2 years in Detroit. They have to go through that training, which means this is not the first rodeo he's ever been at. He's done movies where guns were used. He's had to have this firearms training. So, but before we go any further, I just want to ask you to plug Rick's Firearms Center and tell people how they can get the training they need so that they don't screw up like Alec Baldwin did.
I can be found at my website at DetroitCCW.com. My blog is at legallyarmedindetroit.com. I'm on most of the social media sites that older people are on, such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. All those other new sites, TikTok and the like, I'm not there yet. That's part of my stretch goals, man.
There you go. There you go. Rick, I know I have been very bombastic here with what seemingly is concerning of rhetoric, but in all seriousness, what are the rules for firearm safety? First, because I know in the streets, if a gang member handed a gun to somebody else, the gang member who handed it is not going to jail for murder. What are the rules for handling a firearm?
Man, some of the most basic rules are: one, you always assume that a gun is loaded, man.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is presenting a gun to you, or you come across a gun and you're going to take possession of it, immediately in your mind, you should be thinking that this gun is loaded, regardless of what someone tells you as they're giving it to you. You need only do a cursory search, in a search engine and look up firearm mishaps. And many times, if you read the story, it'll
Okay, we were right there in the middle of that.
gun, and I thought
Yep.
the gun was unloaded. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? It only takes a second to know whether your gun is loaded or not.
Yep.
Just a basic amount of training, and if you don't have it, I strongly suggest that you get it. And once you ascertain whether the gun is loaded or not, then you treat it appropriately. And by appropriately, whether it's loaded or not, you always keep a firearm pointed in a safe direction, such that if somehow a gun discharges, and we'll talk about how that happens, that if a gun discharges, that it's always pointed in a safe direction such that it won't cause injury, death, or damage to property. Another good fundamental firearm safety rule is to keep your finger off the trigger until you've made.
Can you say that again? Can you say that again for the media?
Always keep your finger off the trigger until you have made the conscious decision to fire and to discharge that gun, man. So those are some of the very big basic rules when it comes to fundamental firearm safety, man. And just knowing.
Mm-hmm. Those are the basics right there. Just those two alone. And we're talking with Rick Ector this particular evening. Screen frozen for just a moment, but we'll have him back. Rick Ector is a firearms trainer and Second Amendment advocate, and quite frankly, what many people have just overlooked completely are the basic rules for handling a firearm. I mean, checking the chamber or the cylinder, depending on the type of gun that you have, can easily, with a finger, you can determine if there's something in the block, and whether it's hot and dangerous, or if it's cold and without danger. But the whole idea is that if you have a gun in your hand, you should always presume, even if you checked it yourself, you should always presume that maybe you're human, there's some error to it, you need to check it again for firearms safety. The other thing about what's been said is, when you point the gun at somebody, there is intention to shoot that gun. You may not believe it, you may not think it, but there is intention to fire the weapon. So when you put your finger on the trigger, you have already decided without a shadow of a doubt that you have made the ultimate decision that you're going to fire this particular weapon, and so be it. Yeah, he recognizes he's frozen. Okay. So encouraging him to try over. But literally, this is a person I wanted to talk with you tonight, without a shadow of a doubt, because you're hearing a lot of white noise off the mainstream media, and a lot of it is built up because they watch Alec Baldwin over the years in movies. When you think of Saturday Night Live and the shows that he has done over the years, you know that he has made people laugh and feel good about themselves, especially on the left, with his impersonations of Donald Trump. But this is not the first time he's ever worked on a movie that required the firing of a weapon. And so if you know this for a fact, if you've done this before, then it just makes sense. It just makes sense for you to presume the best in terms of firearm safety. And what we're going to do very quickly, we're going to take a quick break, and hopefully we will have Rick back. You are watching the Exceptional Conservative Show live from the nation's capital. I am your host, the Exceptional one, Ken McClinton. We will be right back.
Everything that's reported on television isn't always true, but it should be. NTD, the power of truth. Now available 24/7 on television and streaming platforms.
Hello to my friends at Christian Book. This is Max Lucado. We've all experienced tough times, and when we're in the middle of a crisis, we can feel overwhelmed and ill-equipped to weather our storm. And if this is where you find yourself, then I have some good news. Relief and deliverance will come. There is a story in the Bible that reminds us of this truth. A book by the name of Esther. When faced with the royal decree that would annihilate her people, Esther had to make some tough choices. Like Esther, you may be staring down a seemingly impossible situation. And what's true for Esther is true for you. Relief and deliverance will come. God will have His victory. The question is not, will God prevail? The question is, will you be part of the team? You don't need to become undone by tough times. You can become unleashed by our triumphant God. You, my friend, were made for this moment.
There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Exceptional Conservative Show live from the nation's capital. I'm yours truly, the exceptional one, Ken McClinton. We are with none other than Rick Ector, one of America's foremost firearms trainers, Second Amendment advocate, and certainly someone you need to know in terms of getting the training. Has trained over 3,000 women over the past 2 years to ascertain their license to carry. is quite knowledgeable in the specter of firearm safety. And it's a great joy having you here, sir. Sorry about the technical issues. Want to ask you, sir, tonight, as we get everything in right order with you, am I off just simply because I think that someone who has handled firearms before on movie sets, has been producers of other movies, should have followed the most simple, basic firearm safety, and it has nothing to do with an assistant director or a props person?
Well, I think with hindsight being 2020, we see what the results are when you don't take appropriate precautions, man. But anytime that there is a firearm, whether it's a gun, a conventional gun, or if it's a gun using modified ammunition for movie making, it is for precisely what has occurred, this tragic incident, this mishap, this act of negligence, which is why you always follow fundamental firearm safety 100% of the time. And as I was sharing with you earlier, it's not rocket science. It's extremely simple, and it doesn't require training such that it would impact a movie production house's bottom line to ensure that everyone is safe. I mean, hindsight being 2020, we can look at the loss of life and the injuries that have occurred thus far, and we can assuredly all agree that it would have been worth the few short moments and pittance of finances to ensure that something on this magnitude doesn't happen.
Exactly, because we're looking at what, $150 to $300 million lawsuit eventually for negligence on the set. It's going to get expensive. Your lawyers from Hollywood are all up in it at this particular juncture, in New York as well. So it's going to get very, very expensive. But here's something that I've heard, and I want you to rebuke it if you can. That the assistant director of the movie handed Alec Baldwin the gun and said cold, meaning that it was not loaded. What should Alec Baldwin have done once the gun was in his hand? Put it in his holster or do something else?
At exactly that moment when he took possession of the firearm, and regardless of what someone tells you, you just can't assume anything. And yes, I understand that was probably that person's job, but here in the firearm industry, when I train people, when I work with fellow trainers or I work with actual students, if I receive a gun, I properly receive it, finger off the trigger, point it in a safe direction. One protocol that we follow is that you never give another person a loaded gun. Okay. Yeah. If possible, depending on the firearms type, you have the action open so that that person, when they take possession of it, they can look and immediately tell that it's unloaded. And if the action is not open, you will open it safely, finger off the trigger, gun it in a safe direction, and you check it for yourself. You never ever assume that a gun is not loaded. We assume the opposite. We assume that all guns are loaded until you've checked, verified, and proven otherwise.
Now, I got to ask you here, because you far wiser than I in the firearms industry. How does someone take a gun, sight unseen, doesn't check it himself, and fires the gun directly through the chest of Miss Hannah and into the shoulder of D'Souza? Why was he pointing the gun in that direction? Is what I'm really asking.
I don't know. I really can't answer that question, man, because it's something that, what, I would never do. Even
Exactly.
when I have training, even if I have, even if I have the equivalent of the movie prop gun. Now we have prop guns in the firearm
Yeah.
training industry. If
Yeah.
you do not want to use a real gun, you can use a training gun, which has no parts, it has no openings, it can't be opened, and it can't be loaded. Even still, it is just a piece of molded plastic that looks like a gun. Even when I train with a training gun or a prop gun in, say, a firearm class that can't even be loaded, we still follow fundamental safety for the simple reason that all habits you develop with training guns have the propensity to carry forward when you have a new gun. And so we don't even point inoperable training unloadable guns at in an unsafe direction, let alone at someone, and then pull the trigger. I mean, it's just unconscionable, man.
Yeah.
I
See,
I don't know how he's sleeping at night.
exactly. See, that's where I am, and it may come across like I'm being really rude, and being, rhetoric filled when it comes to Alec Baldwin, and people would say, "Well, you hate him because he's a conservative." I don't hate the guy at all. I just think he was irresponsible. And then what happens after the shooting? He calls the husband of the woman that he just shot, and he says something accidentally happened on the set. I was handed a hot gun, and quite frankly, if there's anything I can do, just let me know. What kind of person does? How do you do that?
I don't know, man, but I'll tell you this. I've never been in that situation, and heaven forbid, I never will, because I follow fundamental firearm safety. But that, I don't know, man. I mean, mentally, I would be a wreck if, because of my negligence, I directly caused another person to die, and then still have the wherewithal to calmly call that person's family and then confess to killing them. I mean, I don't know how you do that, man. But he
Exactly. See, but that's
apparently
the
he
point,
did it, and
Rick. That's the point. Because if you were in the court of law, people would take what you just said and say he would be a mental and emotional and psychological wreck. He would be throwing up all over the place. He would be shaking. You would have to give him a tranquilizer dart that would fit for an elephant, for him to, keep sanity, for because he's never been at war. I presume he's never killed anybody. That's a very frightening situation to be a part of. You would have to be very cold to do that, but you will also have to be in the process of trying to build your case. A case that it was an accident, and that the person that needs to be blamed is the one who handed you the gun. Am I right in that regard?
I teach in our firearm training classes, man, various scenarios. Okay, the obvious scenario that would come up is that you're a law-abiding citizen living your life, minding your own business, and someone comes up unsolicited and presents you with violence, whether a violent crime, assault, robbery, rape, or even is trying to kill you. Even when a person is trying to commit evil upon you, and you lawfully and justifiably defend yourself intentionally with that firearm in self-defense, you are still going to be an emotional wreck,
Yeah.
even though this person just tried, to kill you and harm you. Now, if you imagine, and I'm just purely speculating, because I
Yeah.
think that emotionally I'm, well within average, man. If I negligently
Yes.
shot someone and killed someone, I would be an emotional wreck.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're a firearms trainer, great experience, trained so many people. You've watched, and you yourself were once involved in an armed robbery, which led you to actually getting in this industry. Am I correct?
You are correct, man. I was actually robbed at gunpoint in my driveway approximately 14, 15 years ago. And you know what? I still remember the incident vividly today. It had a very profound impact on my future from that day forward up until now. And you know what? You never forget it. And it was in many terms it was traumatic, but you know what? You put it everything in its proper place, you process it and you move on. I don't know how anyone can negligently kill someone and negligently injure another worker in the same incident at the same time, and then calmly carry on a conversation with the spouse of the person you just killed. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it to denigrate him. I'm just saying psychologically, he's a different type of person than I am and probably the average person. Man, I don't know who can process that and actually engage in a coherent phone call.
Now, he's the producer of the movie, and we're talking about Alec Baldwin tonight and the killing of the cinematographer on the set. He's the producer. He calls all the shots. He makes all the monetary decisions. He, during the before the union people walked off a couple of hours before the incident, and they hired another private person to do it, which is why I don't know why they're talking about those particular things. It's not a matter of whether you're union or not. They're just firearm safety rules, whether you're union or you're not. And apparently they were not followed there. But during the week, the firearm that he used had misfired twice. But no one in the mainstream media is talking about the fact that he carried on using the same firearm that misfired twice. Isn't that a sign of someone who is either callous or just blatantly negligent? Really doesn't, and forgive my French here, but really just doesn't give a damn, just wants to finish a movie.
You know, I'm not sure exactly how you're using the term misfire, because a misfire is when you actually pull the trigger on a firearm and it doesn't discharge. I'll just say that from the way you described it, something unintentional occurred. Maybe the gun actually discharged when someone wasn't expecting it to, or someone mishandled the operation of the gun and caused a discharge that was probably a careless discharge or a negligent discharge. But if they had those types of incidents occur before, and thank God no one was hurt, no one was injured, no one's property was damaged,
Yep.
that to me would, at least to a normal person, would give you pause to investigate what just happened, how it happened, and how to prevent it from happening in the future. But to go back to the point that I said in the last question, man, if you had qualified or just trained people with a modicum or modest amount of safety training, this incident probably most likely would not have happened.
Could a producer say to the staff, to hell with the equipment, let's just move forward, and we'll work it out in the edit room? Could that possibly have happened?
Who knows, man? You know, you never know what they do with the magic and wonders of technology in the movie making business. You know, I've seen movies on the big screen where they had dinosaurs, and we know that they've been extinct for a long period of time.
Exactly.
You know, it might be possible for them to, you know, paint in or draw in a gun or do something. Who knows what they can do with technology today? You know what? Maybe that might be the future in the aftermath of this event. But
Yeah.
assuming that they don't make any radical changes, which I really don't believe are necessary, I just believe that for all the money it would take to do some fancy camera work, who knows? I'm not an expert in that area, but simple, modest, cost-effective, cheaply provided instruction from a capable, credentialed firearm expert, trainer, instructor would have prevented this mishap, this accident, I use accident. It's not an accident. This act of negligence would not have occurred.
Now, the reason I keep it seems to be like a cross-examination, and forgive me, I've been watching a lot of Perry Mason. But the thing that I want you all to keep hearing over and over again, and a prosecutor will do this, whether in New Mexico, New York, or Hollywood, wherever it is, a prosecutor will constantly want you to hear these words: negligence, negligence. Can you tell everyone why the prosecution needs for people to understand the word negligence?
Well, I'm not a legal expert, but what I would surmise is that the point that they would want to get across to the jury is that if something happens that you should have known, and you didn't do it, whether you knew or not, but if you should have known fundamental firearm safety, or if you should have known to hold guns in a direction away from people, if you should have known that this firearm, if misused, could lead to serious bodily harm and death, then you know what? Then you're negligent.
Yeah.
If the only way around that is if someone could somehow show that maybe the gun was defective in some way and just became defective in that moment in which this fatal discharge occurred, man. But in my opinion,
listening from the evidence,
it was a defective gun or not, it was wholly avoidable, because if you use fundamental firearm safety, even if the gun is defective, you still won't have a bad outcome because you're not pointing a gun at someone and pulling the trigger.
And if it's the same gun that had problems earlier in the week, and you use that gun anyway, it's negligence. Am I right?
I mean, if you're having problems with the firearm, and if you know that there's some mechanical difficulty with the gun, and presumably if you haven't sent it to an expert to fix it,
bingo,
if it was broken, but if you're having some, documented mechanical issues with the gun and you keep using it, I mean, and I hate to say this, what sane person would keep using it? But you know what? That would be speculation on my behalf. But here's my thing, man. Safety above everything else, common sense, education, and training would have gone a very long way in this particular incident.
Will Alec Baldwin hear these 4 words: involuntary manslaughter, or negligent homicide?
I'm not a legal expert, man. All I know is that he was definitely at fault, and he should most assuredly be held accountable to the full extent of the law. I'm hearing a lot of chatter online that because he's rich and famous, that he probably won't experience some consequences that the average man or average person would. I hope that those commentaries and those statements are false. I hope that he's held fully accountable for his negligence and that he's not given a pass because he's a rich, very popular and famous individual. Because of his negligence, there is a person who is dead and is not coming back. There's another person that was also wounded, didn't die, but still wounded nevertheless. If it happened to you or I, we would suffer some penalty or some sanction, and so should he.
Amen. Rick Ector with us tonight. Forgive my cross-examination, sir. I'm only Perry Mason on television. But where can people get the necessary firearms training so that they don't screw up someone else's life or their own?
I would definitely look for a credentialed firearms instructor, one who has a track record of safely teaching students without shooting them. I would say if you're in the Metro Detroit area, Southeast Michigan, you would consider giving me a call, Rick Ector. I am a National Rifle Association credentialed trainer. I've been certified to teach the course, whether it's basic pistol, rifle, shotgun, personal protection 1, personal protection 2, and a slew of others. If you're interested in looking me up, find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, blogger, Rick Ector, Rickector. And thanks for having me on the show tonight.
Rick, thank you so much for putting up with me tonight, man. I would have made a great attorney, right? I should have gone back to law school. There you go. I should have gone to law school.
Man, look, you're still alive. There's blood still running through your veins. You can still carry on a conversation and have rational thought. You know what? It's not too late, man. Go to law school. You're laughing, man.
Thank you, sir. God bless you, Rick. We're going to have you back. You know we're going to be calling on you the next few months, probably in the next 8 weeks, because Santa Fe, New Mexico, district attorney said yesterday that there is a probability of charges being made. It will take them about 6 to 8 weeks to do the investigation, but they will let us know then. So we're going to definitely have you back, Rick. God bless you, sir. Thank you for all that you do.
All right, man. God bless you as well, and thanks for having me on.
All right. Rick Ector, ladies and gentlemen, if I could go to Detroit right now and get trained, I would find Rick Ector's spot. He has trained over 3,000 women in 2 years to handle a gun, and great with concealed carry observations as well. Definitely find him, get your training, and in fact, pick up the phone wherever you are in the country. If you're looking for someone to train your family, your friends, your church folk, crime is rising all the way around the country. You need to teach your people how to protect themselves. Rick Ector would be the man I would call in a heartbeat, in a serious heartbeat. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back with more of the best in urban conservative talk. And I got to ask you two very important questions. Number one, do you know where your children are? Number two, do your children know where you are?
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?